Hey peeps, welcome back to the channel. I am long overdue for just a sit down conversation with you all. I am drinking honey and water. And so I've been gone for a while, and let me tell y'all why. Point blank, I've been embarrassed. Something kind of embarrassing happened to me, and I was trying to wrap my head around it. And I thought, rather than show you the super polished version, I'm just gonna kind of walk through the healing process so that you all can see. I think there are parts of this story that will be applicable to people, and I want to share, maybe so that you don't make some of the mistakes that I made, and then also so you have an awareness moving forward. Okay, so as you all know, I'm a career coach, life and career coach, and I have my business on the side. I always have a business on the side as I have a 9 to 5. And I was working in human resources, HR, as I was building my business. And there was a lot of overlap in that my business could support the work I was doing on a day-to-day basis. So as I was growing as a coach, it was making me better at my 9 to 5. And let me back up a little bit. I don't think I've told you all how I got this job. If you watch my other sabbatical videos, the Lord sent me to Houston on a sabbatical. I was kind of waiting it out to see. I was on sabbatical for an entire calendar year. And I finally got a job literally weeks before the pandemic hit. And my organization hired me, and then they did a complete hiring freeze. So I know it was the hand of God that I got this job in the first place. And I went from working in higher education, in recruitment, to working in HR, in engagement and recruitment. So it's a weird crossover that really shouldn't have been able to happen except for the Lord. The Lord just made it so that there was transferable skills that just kind of made sense, even though it wasn't the most obvious fit. Anyway, so in this role that I had at this nonprofit, nonprofits, they're so interesting. This nonprofit that I worked at, when you see someone's application and then your eyes get shiny, I was literally in the interview and they were asking me, so what else do you do? What else do you do? And they noticed I had a communications background, and I had a background in, I've been a content creator for over a decade. I have been blogging, writing, and also making video content. So I was this multimedia type of person on top of everything else I was actually hired to do. So my job was to create engagement opportunities for people at the organization. And then we went online, we went virtual because of the pandemic. And so I quickly had to convert all of our in-person events and things to a virtual type of environment. And I loved it because I really enjoy being the first to hold a role. Almost all my roles in the past, I've been the inaugural person. And I really like that. I think it's super exciting. You get to create a lot of things. And so I enjoyed it, and I didn't mind being stretched thin at points. They would have me doing things out of my scope where it's like, oh yeah, you're doing engagement, but now you're also creating written content, you're creating videos and all these things. And at some point I started to notice that the scope of my job kept growing. My title kept changing. I went from working in engagement and retention, and then my title changed again, and I was engagement and in inclusion. My title changed again, and I was engagement and learning. And so it was good in that I learned a lot of different parts about HR in a short amount of time. I worked there for 2 years, but it also meant there was a lot of instability and lack of clarity about what my actual job was. In fact, because of the constant changes on my team, I had 4 different manager changes in 2 years. And it was just really hard to figure out, what do you all want from me other than we just want to use every gift and talent that you have without compensating you extra. And so my title kept changing. My salary was not changing, but my title was changing. My managers were changing. Everything else was kind of on paper staying the same, but in any given quarter, my job looked totally different. And it kind of was odd because the rest of my team was a human resources team for whom there is a cycle and the things kind of stay the same. And so it's easy to master your job because it doesn't change. But my job was changing every quarter. And yes, it was a good challenge, but it was also kind of hard because it was a moving target as far as my performance and how to know I was doing well. And so I remember things were going fine, and then I started to have a little bit of issue with the lack of clarity, issue with the constantly changing job. And I kind of inquired about it. I was asking my manager and I was saying like, hey, it's a little odd to have so many changes in just one job. Other people don't experience this. This is a bit unsettling. Like, can we talk about it? Can we do something about it? And in the back of my mind, I knew that a pivot would be coming in the future. But because of my team constantly changing, I was trying, I don't know, this probably doesn't make sense, but I was trying to do what I always do, in that when I sense that a pivot is coming, I try to prepare to leave the place better than I left it. So I will always like to do a handoff so there isn't a huge gap between me and the next person. So I was preparing all my documents. I was making sure I outlined all of the processes I had for everything. I had process maps and I had links to everything. I was super, super organized because my thought was that I know this is not the long-term place that I want to be, but I don't want to leave the place in shambles when I do eventually leave. And so I was trying to like subtly communicate that to my manager, that I'm not leaving now, but I want to make sure that if we're to add someone new to our team, or if I'm to make a transition, that like people know where files are. I only told like maybe one person this, my actual manager, because we were a 2-person team, and if I left, he would be left doing all my work. And so I knew I had to be transparent, at least to him, about that. And so I'm talking to my manager. At some point, word gets back to my director, and she gets this idea that I'm unhappy and that I'm immediately trying to leave. And so she calls me into a Zoom meeting and she's saying, yeah, I know the job is hard. You know, the job wasn't that hard. She was saying, I know that the job is hard. And so I get the sense that you're unhappy here. And, you know, it's really important that people be in a place where they're happy and they're fulfilled. And I'm at this meeting looking at her. This is a fellow Black woman. And she's talking in a code and in a tone that was like not quite matching the situation. I haven't said that I was going to resign. I didn't say anything like that. I was just saying that our team has so much motion. And if there's going to be a transition, I want everyone to know what's going on. Because I ended up being the keeper of a lot of information in a short amount of time. And I didn't want things to just disappear if I transitioned. So we have this meeting and she's smiling. I mean, it seems pretty positive. She's telling me about her family and all these things. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just stay and wait it out until the next person comes and our team grows, because we were expecting some team members who might be added. And so I said, okay, maybe I'll just wait it out. And I remember something happens and she talks to my manager, and my manager was like, oh, there's so much he say, she say, like everyone just get on the phone. And it was just this weird thing. She calls me back the next day on a Zoom call because I had relayed what had happened in our meeting, she and I, to my manager. And I was like, well, it looks like maybe, you know, maybe there can be some clarity about my role. Maybe, you know, we can just figure some things out so it's actually more, it's making sense, like the scope is tighter, you know. And so she gets on the Zoom call with me, and I promise you, something got miscommunicated. I don't even know what it was. And she says to me, I can't believe you would miscommunicate our conversation, that you would lie and say that I said that you could like stay and finish out your job, because I had this big project that I was responsible for. So my plan was to stay until I finished the project. And so she was saying, you know, you lied and did all these things. I am a lot of things. I'm not out here lying at work. I, you know, stretch myself thin. I try to be wearing all types of hats. I try to be all things to all people. Big mistake. Don't do that. And so she was like, yeah, you know, it was this anger that was very misplaced and didn't even seem like a real anger. It felt like a person was needing an opportunity to be upset. And she was just like, yeah, you misrepresented the truth. And, you know, she sent me an email right after that said, you know, we are expecting your resignation as soon as possible. And like the whiplash that I felt, I was like, expecting my resignation? where did that even come from, you know? And so, you know, I'm in the human resources space. And if the head of human resources tells you that she's expecting your resignation, you really think like, oh, well, maybe I have to resign now because she said she's expecting it. And, you know, I talked to a couple friends of mine who work in human resources, and they said, you don't have to resign if you don't want to, just because they're expecting it. And so I eventually was saying, like, I sent an email. I said, I am not sure what happened, what got miscommunicated. I did not indicate that I was trying to resign. I have a project that I'm assigned to. My goal is to finish the project that I've started. It's a lot of work. And if I let it go, people will not be able to finish the project because I am the holder of the project. So it would not be appropriate for me to resign at this time. And that is not my intention. And they got me in a meeting. They said, okay, fine, let's have a meeting. And I need to tell you what the Lord was telling me this whole time. As I was going through this job, being stretched, mind you, I say that the job wasn't hard because the actual work I did wasn't hard, but the fact that it was like I had tentacles everywhere, it just wasn't a sustainable way to work. But the Lord kept telling me that I was going to transition soon. So I had that instruction, but I was also trying to pace myself. I can tend to be a little ahead of God if I'm not careful. So I thought, okay, let me just wait for the Lord to tell me when. That particular morning when I had the meeting, the Lord said to me, take all of your stuff to work. Take all of it. And I had a pretty light work equipment. So I had like a monitor, I had some folders, I had a desk reference binder that would help me to, like if someone needed to do my job, the binder, everything was there. But I was more of a digital person. So all of my processes, like I said, were documented in a digital way. Like you could hit one click and all of the things you needed were right there. So the Lord said, take everything to your desk, take it to work tomorrow. And I was like, okay. I should have been like, what does that mean? I didn't stress. I just took all my stuff. And so the morning of that meeting, I sat at my desk, I put all my things there, put them aside, and I stepped into the meeting. And the head director who asked me to resign wasn't there. My manager was there, and one of the other directors was there. And I sit down at the meeting looking at my manager who knows all of the things that I have shared with him about potentially transitioning at some point, trying to wait, trying to do the best for the team and not transition too soon, trying not to offload all the work on him, trying to wait till we had a new team member. And I'm looking at my manager, and my manager is looking at me. And he says, okay, we're here to put you on a performance improvement plan. And I say to myself, the Lord had just prepared my mind, so I was so calm. I was so calm. I was like eerily calm to the point where I even had a smile on my face. I was like, because part of me was just so incredulous. Like, I cannot believe this. I can believe it, but I also cannot believe it. And so a performance improvement plan, they put you on it so that you can get on a path to getting your life together, essentially. Now, performance improvement plans, at least ours, had 3 steps. You had to have a warning and then a second warning. So I said, hey, when was my first warning? And they were like, oh, well, your first warning was via email when you missed the deadline. Me missing the deadline was really me saying to my director that deadline doesn't work because it's not feasible. So that they counted that as my first warning. And I said, so when was the second warning? And they said, well, technically we don't need a second warning. We can just move straight to the final path, which is this performance improvement plan. I said, okay, noted, please go ahead. And so he reads me all of these projects that need to be done at a certain amount of time, all of which I have told them previously, those timelines were not realistic. And so I let him finish. I don't interrupt him. I'm like, okay, I'm listening. And he finishes. And so the other thing is our job was hybrid, but most of us worked virtually. And I had like changed my entire life just so that I could have this virtual job. And the final stipulation was that like, oh, you'll have to report to the office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, Your job will no longer be virtual. It will be in person, which just seemed like unnecessarily cruel somehow, because nobody else on my team works in person. So I would literally be the only one in our cubicle, for what reason, doing what. So I'm listening, because it just sounded like a list of unreasonable demands. And so I let him finish. And so he said, okay, so I would need you to agree to these things. And I said, well, thank you for compiling that list. There is no way I can do any of those things in the time allotted. And I think you and I both know that, because we've discussed how unreasonable these timelines are. And so my answer is no, I will not be doing any of those things. I will not be agreeing to the terms of this performance improvement plan. And I pushed the folder back and I just smiled and waited. And so I said, so what's next? And both of them look at me and I look at them like, I'm not going to do that. And I don't need to be hostile. I don't need to be an angry Black woman in this moment to tell you that your demands are being unreasonable. And so the other manager, director who's there says, well, if you don't accept, then we're going to have to involuntarily terminate you. And I said, well, I guess you're going to have to involuntarily terminate me, because I won't be resigning. And he says, well, I hope you know that if you do this and you get involuntarily terminated, it might mess up your opportunity to collect unemployment. And I said, well, so be it. All the while, this wild calm and peace was just rushing through me, like telling me, the Lord was just kind of like helping me, don't yell, don't get angry, don't cry. I usually don't cry much, except if I'm very, very upset. And I was upset, but for some reason I just wasn't saying anything. And so I said, okay, do I need to sign something? I was having an out-of-body experience, because I was calm. I was almost pleasant. Like, no one could say that I like blew up the building, because I really didn't. You would have thought we were having a staff meeting. That's how calm I was. And first of all, time out. Why is it that I had to be so calm? You know, as a Black woman, if I had had any other reaction, the things people would have been saying about me. Anyway, so super calm. I was like, okay. I signed the papers to say that I agreed to be involuntarily terminated. My manager like signs the papers, and I give them my badge, and they said, okay, well, we're gonna need your equipment back. And I just point blank, it's at my desk. And I think it was at that moment he was like, oh, we're playing chess. We're not playing checkers. This is a very different type of person. It is the Lord. He said, we're going to need all your things. I said, they're at my desk. It's like, okay. And I don't know what it is. I don't know. My manager, in that moment, I could say, and if he ever sees this video, he ought to know, my manager was a very good man. But in that moment of leadership, he showed a lot of cowardice, I will say. I would never let my direct report fall under the sword like he let me fall under the sword. Because it wasn't even like, oh, it was a slap on the wrist. That performance improvement plan was like not making sense, right? And so in that moment, he could have stood up for me. He could have fixed it, and he didn't. He let me be put on a performance improvement plan. I don't hate him by any means. Those last couple hours didn't negate how great of a manager he had been to me that whole time. He was my last manager out of the 4 changes that I had. He was my last manager, my favorite manager, I should say. But I was really disappointed in him in that moment. But at the same time, it was coming out of my mouth to say something contrary. I was almost shocked as it was coming out of my mouth. And I said, you know, ooh, I said his name. I'm gonna have to beep that out. And I said, I really appreciated working under you. I learned a lot. It was great being on your team. Thank you for all that you taught me. I wish you well with your new team member, with your whole staff, blah, blah. And I said, okay, I'm turning my stuff and I'm leaving. And so that day when I walked out of that office, that was the last time that I had to see those people, because I turned in my stuff. What business did I have with them? And I'll say this, the Lord didn't let me resign, because had I resigned, I would not be eligible for unemployment. Had I been so stubborn and been like, oh, forget them anyway, and I threw a temper tantrum and all these things, I quit, nothing. But because they involuntarily terminated me, I was eligible for unemployment, which God really used to bless me in this season. So yeah, I still have my coaching business. I still have my coaching certifications. But if I'm honest, being let go in that way gave me such a bad taste in my mouth for nonprofits, gave me such a bad taste in my mouth for working for other people. And so it's the Lord like reminding me of who I am. And I'll say this last piece. It was really cool. My church had this program called Presbytery, where you get a prophetic word from our leaders. And so these people didn't know me, and they just kind of prophesied as the Lord was speaking about me. And of all of the things that the Lord could have said, the Lord reminded me of my identity. I'll see if I can find a clip. Maybe I could post it here.
You're high capacity. You're someone that can do a job that would normally take 5 people. You're good at multitasking, and I heard you are definitely a 10-talent woman. If you were asked to do something you don't know how to do, you wouldn't say, oh, I can't do that. You would research how to do it, and you would just get it done. I heard girl boss. I heard CEO. You have the skills to run a top corporation. And I heard to me, don't ever hold back those strengths.
The Lord reminded me that I am CEO quality, that I am a girl boss, that I am able to do the job of 5 people, like I am a high capacity person. And in the time since I've been let go, I forgot that. And I literally needed the Lord God in heaven to remind me of who I was, because I almost forgot. And so, yeah, sometimes when I think about my last place of work, I used to feel an anger and an indignation. And the Lord did me a favor in releasing me from that place, because I might have stayed longer than I needed to and just run myself ragged. Even this time when I left, I kind of transitioned into a kind of burnout. And I'm trying to figure out, as a high capacity person, how to transition without needing a burnout first being the trigger for my transition. Like, how do I see the signs of something going wrong and say, this looks like a poop show. I should leave, you know? I'm always the type to be like, let me see it through to the end. Baby, you don't need to see nothing to the end. When you see signs of dysfunction, quickly start making your moves for a pivot. So let me think about the lessons that I learned. This is going to sound so cynical. Your work people are not your family. I learned that personally. They're not your family. Even people that you knew before that you now work with, when you're at work with them, they are your work friend. They are not your friend from before. Something happens to people that makes them act in a way that is in their best self-interest. Doesn't make them bad people, but usually they're looking for something in their best self-interest or something that is mutually beneficial. And if helping you might hurt them, you might find that they become a totally different person than who you thought they were. So that's first thing. Work people are not your family. Secondly, be discreet. If you're gonna make pivot moves, be discreet. And I think for me, I have this desire to leave a place better than I found it. So I have trouble just like chunking the deuce and not preparing people. But we're not responsible for that. I think keeping track of all your documents, doing a good job so that when you do transition, it's fine. That's probably the most you can do. You can't help them find a new person unless like you're helping them in the recruitment sense. But for the most part, you're not responsible for what happens when you leave. Just leave as well as you can. Leave in a positive way. So that's that piece. And 3, know your lane. I can tell myself now, I can be really, really out of my lane. When I spot an opportunity to improve a thing, I love to improve things. I love to improve processes and make things more efficient, but sometimes that's not my lane. If I wasn't hired for that, think about it this way. If you weren't hired for that, you don't have authority in that space. You don't have permission to go and try to make change And so you're just going to frustrate yourself if you have not been given the authority to do a certain thing. And so that was a big lesson for me. Stay in my lane. I don't have to be all the things to all the people. And then lastly, I'd probably say stick up for yourself. I'm really grateful for the way the Lord just helped me not look dumb. You know, I could have rolled over. I could have said, okay, whatever you want. And I could have struggled on that performance improvement plan only to be fired anyway. They were going to fire me, y'all. There really wasn't much cause to, but they were going to fire me. They were going to find a way. That's what performance improvement plans typically turn out to be. Don't want to alarm you if you've been put on one, but once you hear that performance improvement plan and people start asking you if you'd be happy elsewhere, those kind of conversations are usually conversations that are leading to you departing from the organization. Whether it's willing or unwilling, it's really up to you. You have a lot of power. Once you start seeing that dysfunction, start being strategic. Zip it up. Keep your money moves, put your pivot moves on private mode. Do not be sharing with people. And then last thing, have some trusted advisors. My advisors who happen to be skilled in human resources gave me some clutch advice. Had I not listened to it, I would have been really struggling in ways that were unnecessary. So the Lord is so gracious to me. He's so kind. I now realize like being laid off is nothing to be embarrassed about. I really did my best, and I had to not let my employer bully me. I just couldn't let them do it. And the Lord gave me a heads up, and I'm grateful that I paid attention to the signs. I mean, y'all, it happened so quickly. It happened in the matter of days. Me unwinding and unraveling, uncoupling from my organization where I was working. So anyway, I'm reminded that I'm still that girl despite having been laid off, and it's not my identity. It's just a thing that happened, and I can smile about it now because God is using it to do some really great things in my life. Shortly after being laid off, some really great things happened. I got into songwriting. I took a trip to Costa Rica once again to do some more coaching and support and things like that, and met some really great people. So it's been good. God is using all things that the enemy meant for evil. He's turning them for my good. So I knew that I didn't owe y'all, but I wanted to bring you into this part of the journey. I think sometimes you see the highlight reels of people and you don't see the parts that are not so pretty. So this is a not so pretty time that somehow the Lord is giving me perspective on. And I know that there'll be years down the line that I'll look at this and be like, okay, God was still good. He was still faithful. And if you're somebody who's walking through something similar, I want to tell you, you still have value. You still have worth. What remains is to find the place that will see your value and your worth. I'm here to help. I am a coach in the life coaching area and the career coaching area. So I've had to coach myself and receive coaching in this time. Even had a really great therapist, shout out to Teresa, who as I was transitioning out of the organization was really helpful in helping me stay uplifted and positive. So God is good. I haven't been broken even through all of it. So yeah, that is it. Please leave a comment below. You all had some amazing comments on my other sabbatical videos. One thing I'll say, it's good that I have my own business because I keep having these work situations that let me know that I'm not made for a normal 9-to-5 situation. So God knows. And I think that's why I started a business last year. So I peep game. I'm listening to the Holy Spirit. Anyway, bye y'all. Take care. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Since you're already here, you might as well watch some more videos. I have videos on minimalism, faith, finances, sustainability, all sorts of things. So check out any of these videos around here. Take care. Happy watching.